And there we go. We're live. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join us in this afternoon's AMA with Ivan Orlov of FuseBox. There we go. We're live. And welcome, everyone. Thanks for taking the time. And I just told Ivan to mute his YouTube playback, and guess what I did not do? So, so in any event, yeah, I wanted to ask everyone to post your questions in the YouTube chat. And then after this show, we'll post any links, like the links to FuseBox.js, anything else that comes up along the way, we'll put in the show notes, and also we'll post in Discord. So with that out of the way, let's, I'll check the notes real quick. Cool. All right, can everyone hear us okay?
Hello. Hello, guys.
Yeah. All right, cool, they can. So in any event, Ivan, why don't you kick off and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Russia. I was born in Moscow. Lived there for about 27 years, to be precise, and then I met a girl from Finland, and we moved to Finland. So yeah, lived there 5 years, and then here I am in Malta. So that's just the story of my migrations, like throughout the world, right? And actually, by my education, like I have a master's degree in journalism. So no matter how like weird it sounds, right? But since I was probably 15 years old, and I got a CD from my friend which said Delphi, and I was quite curious about it, like what's it all about, you know, and what does it do? And so I installed it, and I realized that I can actually lay out some buttons on an application. That I press a button, another button, and then it all like you know appears, and it's actually clickable and it's working. So this is where I got like very interested in the whole programming, because I was curious. Well, what if I wire some action to this button, you know, and make it all work? So there it all started. I learned a little bit of Delphi. Of course, it was more of a joke, but yeah, it was just, you know, I was curious. Then started learning more languages, as in like PHP and CSS. In the meantime, as I mentioned already, I was studying as a journalist, but it was probably more of a mistake of my own that I didn't think it through, and I didn't really know what to do about all that desires and ideas in my head that I had, and so just you know happened. So I was studying, but then after my first year, I already started working as a programmer. At first, it was very simple, right? I had some very simple tasks to do, like more or less like clean up and doing that here and that, and I got more and more involved in the whole process of programming, and the more I studied it, the more I learned it, the more interesting it was for me. Yeah, I started learning more languages, PHP, CSS. Then came along JavaScript, Python, Java. Yeah, and so here I am now.
You know, one of the questions that comes up frequently that I hear is you know, people either they have a university background or a computer science, you know, a formal background, or they come from some other discipline. You know, did you have any formal computer science, you know, instruction or classes?
No, actually, nothing like it. It was all, I know, mainly, well, at first it was just my friends. They were like the source of the knowledge, you know, and they shared their experience. They helped me a lot, obviously. And then it was Google. You know, I remember back in the days where I worked with my friend, and I asked him a question, hey, how do you do that, right? And he said, hey, have you been banned by Google, you know? So that's where I learned that actually Google can, you know, answer a lot of questions, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So no, I don't have any like a special degree in that.
Well, I think that's really important because more and more, that's one of the transitions we've gone through the past 20 years as an industry is, there are multiple paths to the same spot, and you can learn in different ways and through different media, to basically become a developer. So
that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, in most cases, most of my friends, they have education in something that's like totally irrelevant nowadays. So yeah, that's the sad story of it. But if I am to go back, to the past and change that, I think I would change that. I think I would go for a master's degree in in IT something. But I don't regret that either way. Yeah.
No, and I think that's not necessarily bad because so much of what we do is based on communication, whether it's team member to team member or writing documentation or articles or whatnot. A journalism degree doesn't seem that odd to me. It seems like it'd be quite valuable.
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. But the thing is, I never worked as a journalist, ever. So I got it done, and I sort of forgot about it. Well, of course, it gave me like some experience, some knowledge about the communication skills, languages, and much more. So that is good. Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
So it just helped my personality to grow, so to speak, right?
Gotcha. So how did you get into open source? What was your first open source project, and how did you make that transition?
Yeah. I don't remember the exact date, right? Was it 10 years ago or something? But I was always trying something new. So, for example, if I see a solution on the internet, I try it out and I see, well, I don't particularly like how it works, right? So I just think to myself, well, what if I create my own stuff? And I didn't have an actual idea in my head what is open source. I mean, I knew what open source is, but I didn't have that much desire to contribute, so to speak, right? I just thought, okay, maybe I just create something and just do it for myself, and just let's see how it goes, and maybe people will start using it. I don't know, but I just do it because I like it, and then I realized that actually doing something, releasing some library may actually help other people. So why not spreading the word and telling people about this library, right? And see how people react to it, right? And then, of course, I've been using lots of other different libraries, and one case, I remember that I contributed to an open source project. I was using a library, I think it was called Testem or something, some very obscure library, nothing important. And yeah, I discovered a bug there, and I proposed a fix, and they told me, hey, why don't you open a pull request? And I thought, like, what's a pull request, right? So then I learned, like, what's a pull request, and how we go about it. And yeah, there it goes.
Sure. I think it's important, something you said, that, you just have to take that leap. You have to take that jump, find an opportunity and act on it. And, we all start out where we're unsure of ourselves, unsure of our ability. That whole imposter syndrome sinks in. And so your story there, your experience is pretty valuable. That at some point you just have to do it. Yeah. What keeps you going? Day in, day out. This is oftentimes a tough business. How do you stay motivated?
Stay motivated. How do I stay motivated? It depends on what you like. In which field do you want me to stay? Do I want myself to stay motivated, right? Like if it's open source, that's one story. If it's like work related, something that brings money on the table, that's another story, right? But in regards to, for example, the open source, the projects that I have, right? Well, it's my passion in the first place, right? I created it. That's my baby. That's my product, right? So if people say, well, we like it, well, there are some bugs, but we actually like it. It is motivating, that something that you've created being used by other people, and that is very motivating. That is very encouraging.
Sure. Did you have a mentor when you were starting out, or anywhere along the path, someone that?
Yeah. In the early days, I had a mentor. Yeah, of course, and he was actually the one who told me, "Hey, have you been banned by Google?" Not as if he was annoyed by me asking questions. I think maybe he was a little, but nonetheless, yeah, he was guiding me through the process and telling me where exactly I need to go and how do I need to do things. And he introduced me to classes, what's in abstractions and whatnot. So it all comes from him. And after a few years, I learned how to handle it myself, how to keep up with technology, and the trends and everything else, and how to do things by myself, pretty much.
Gotcha. Cool. What kind of when you're looking at people as an employer, what kind of benchmarks and criteria do you look at for judging who's going to be a good developer, who would be the best fit for the job? Who would be the best developer?
Yeah. Well, if I'm to look at the resume, right, or if I am to meet a person, I think that I would say that the most important criteria is to stay curious and be engaged in the process. I wouldn't mind if a person, say, lacking some knowledge, this you can teach, right? The person can learn. So the most important is be actually engaged, be interested in what you're doing. If what you do it makes you bored, right? Then it's not good. You need to be engaged in the process. You need to go through trial errors. You need to make mistakes. You need to improve your skills. You need to try, basically. So I think that's the most important.
Sure. I'm going to go through some of the questions people have posted now.
Yeah.
Something that came up is, again, as your experiences, I guess both from the open source side as a director of FuseBox, as well as having your own business. Do you find that in the industry, employers are taking self-taught developers seriously when it comes to finding a job? Have you found that that's any kind of a drawback, or what is the trend you're seeing?
I think that self-taught developers are actually getting a better welcome than the ones that have a degree. That's actually also in my experience, and I know for granted that, for example, if a person, he has a degree in science, right, and he comes and say, well, okay, hire me, pay me a lot of money, right, I'm good. So it is always questionable. You need to always have something behind this statement, right? You need to have examples of your work. You need to show how you need to have a background, right? Even though you have a master's degree, it doesn't mean that you're a good developer or you're a qualified developer. So yeah, I think self-taught developers are very, very welcome.
Sure. How much weight do you put in an individual's GitHub account? The repos they've built. I mean, do you look at those when you're evaluating people?
How do I evaluate what open source projects? This is the question,
well, it's
right?
for people that are wanting to contribute to your open source, or as an employer, people that you're looking to hire. Maybe the question's better, more general, is what kind of things do you look at to evaluate their work?
Well, to me, I think one of the important things is, well, of course, the contributions, whether the people have contributed themselves, have contributed to other projects. So if they did, that's a good sign that they are involved, right? That they are engaged, and they like the process, and they want things to become better, right? So yeah, that would be a good sign. That would be a good sign, yeah. Then, of course, the places that they worked before, would be interested to know what kind of technologies they've used, what kind of have they used Agile, have they used that and that and that, like more or less to have an understanding of what a person have gone through, what kind of stages of development, like personal and technical, so to say, right?
Sure. What's the some advice? You come into contact with a lot of different developers, both at all experience levels. What's something you see in the industry today about people that's driving you crazy, and what advice do you have for people that are building their skills, and the newer web developers?
Yeah, I actually do. Well, in regards to the first part, what is like the most probably annoying thing in the like modern web developers is that they stick to something, to some trend, right? And they don't try to like the viewer field is like narrow, right? So they don't try to expand it, and they're just okay. I'm not talking about Webpacks or anything, but there is such a thing, right? That they just focus on one thing, and they just keep pushing it, not trying to understand and see what's around you. And the second part, where will be my advice, is not to be afraid to go off the book. So, well, if you want to reinvent a bicycle, a wheel, say, right, then, well, you can do that. You will learn, well, then of course you'll learn that it's useless because we have already a wheel, right, or a bicycle,
Right.
it doesn't matter. But you will have an invaluable experience from that. Trial and error, you will learn, and maybe in the process, you will actually learn how to improve things and how to improve that particular library, or create your own library. Even like, for example, if you try to make your own React, maybe you will find a way to make it better. Who knows? But either ways, you will have an invaluable experience. You will have it. You'll learn.
Gotcha.
You'll benefit from it. Yeah, this is
True. From the developers that you meet, the up and coming developers, do you have any kind of gut feel for how long it takes someone not just to learn the tools, but to become productive, where they're really at that junior programmer level, from zero to junior programmer? Any kind of rough estimate or feel on the time frame?
So from zero to hero, you're saying, or from zero to a sort of like a junior developer?
Yeah, I think from zero to job ready.
Yeah, from zero to job ready. It depends on person's like motivations, obviously, and aspiration, right? But you can't push a person, like, if he doesn't understand like one thing, you cannot just keep pushing, or you cannot just keep bashing him against the wall. Okay, you need to learn, like, this needs to be a different approach. So, and how much will it take? It depends solely on that person, right? But in my experience, well, it's hard. It's hard, and at first they need to read a lot. It's boring. They need to learn the basics, and they need to learn why, so you can speak like the same language to them, so they will understand you.
No, that's a good point. Everyone has to have the opportunity to make mistakes as part of that learning process too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really hard. But for me, like back in the days when I decided, okay, I'm just gonna start learning, right? It was much harder because at first I didn't have any support, right? So I just had to go to, I don't know, like various websites download scripts, like ready-made scripts, like PHP scripts, and then I had to edit them manually. Like, I didn't fully understand what I did, but what I did understand is that if I modify one symbol or like one variable, it actually makes it like an effect to the entire code. And I actually understood that effect, but I didn't comprehend the bigger like a scale. And for that scale, you need to learn. I don't know how long will it take. A year, probably.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed for someone with a journalism background. You just described the scientific method. You observe, you make a change, you see what effect it has, and you learn.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I'm interested to find out more about FuseBox, and I have to admit, I have struggled over the past couple years with bundlers and packagers. And when I read about FuseBox, I was just like, wow. Could you give us just an introduction to what FuseBox is and why you chose to devote your time to this project?
Yeah, of course. Well, FuseBox is a bundler, which has a first-class TypeScript support. So that's probably one of the main features. And another one that is super fast. Well, it is faster by an amount of gratitude compared to Webpack and other bundlers available. So yeah, that's briefly what a FuseBox is. And going forward with the how did I get involved with FuseBox, right? Was it October 2017? I was just playing around, and I realized that Gulp doesn't cut it anymore. You gotta put things together and just make it have it more consistent, and then TypeScript. I like TypeScript, but I found it tedious. Like if I need to set up a project, I need to do some Gulp, just set up Gulp. I need to install that and that and that, install like crazy amount of scripts there. And I just didn't like it. Then I tried Webpack, and I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. At first, things didn't work for me, like at all. Module cannot be resolved, that and that and that. And then I realized that it's very slow. And then I realized that, I don't like it. So, and I told to my friend that, you know what? I think I'm going to try to create my own bundler. And he said, "Man, you're crazy," he told me. I said, "Nah, it's just a bundler, just, connecting all the dots together, like all the modules together, and then just going with it." And I didn't really realize the scale that I am actually tapping into, because at first to me it was just parsing require statements, and just collecting modules. But then I realized how complex that is, and that developers might require they might have their own requirements to the system. So I thought, why not having plugins, right? But let's make them simpler, much simpler. So I did that too. And then 3 months later, when I had the a very first version of FuseBox, I put some description there on the README and posted it on Echo.js, as I remember. And to my great surprise, I have received around 1,000 stars in 2 days. And I was shocked, because I had open source projects before. I had millions of UI frameworks and stuff, and none of them got even 50 stars, barely 50 stars. And then suddenly people were very welcoming it. So that was very surprising and encouraging. So yeah, and I'm there ever since.
Cool. No, I'm glad you did, because my experience has been a bit limited, but with both Webpack and Rollup, something that just drove me crazy is the complexity of the config. And I realized that Webpack, what is it, release 4 changed that a bit, but it was really refreshing to see in FuseBox how little configuration there is.
They're usually very compact, yeah.
Yeah. What's the FuseBox feature that you've had the most positive feedback from the community on? What's had the biggest impact?
Yeah, well, the most positive feedback is speed. Is speed, definitely, because people coming from different backgrounds, from different companies on Gitter, and they just, some of them just create issues on FuseBox repository, and they just say, "Man, I just want to say a big thank you. You saved me," because like it used to with Webpack, I had to spend like 30 seconds per build of my life, to wait for it to finally bundle, and now it just does it in like 50 milliseconds. So yeah, that is the most that is very positive, right? And that keeps you motivated, definitely.
Yeah, that 30 seconds that you'll never get back times however many thousands of times you do that adds up quickly.
Yeah, exactly. So if you count how many hours, how many minutes first per day you spend, and how many hours a week, and how many hours, how many days a year, that it adds up.
Yeah.
Adds
so
up.
do you think it's still worthwhile for people to spend time learning Gulp or Grunt or another scripting type tool?
Yeah, well, I'm 100% positive that Gulp or Grunt, they just they're more or less dead. That's the trend that is over. People are onto bundlers and all that. Gulp thing, that's definitely clutter. That it has to end.
Right. Let's see. Webpack is the bundler most people use today. I mean, it has the biggest share, I think. And by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. But in addition to speed, what are some of the things that FuseBox, other things FuseBox really does well as compared to Webpack or Rollup or any of the others?
Well, yeah, I probably mentioned that earlier, is the TypeScript, the first-class TypeScript support. And that means that once you have installed FuseBox, you just point the bundle to index.ts or index.tsx, and off you go. You don't need to bother yourself installing plugins and doing some crazy manipulations and setting up, making a large configs. You don't need any of that. So that is TypeScript, right? Then some good amount of plugins. It is maintained by the developers, by the contributors, and me, of course. So a good chunk of plugins like HTML, CSS, SCSS, and many more. So they are all in one place.
Sure.
And that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I was just saying that that is a very good thing, because it all is maintained by it's all kept up to date, and compared to Webpack, where if you try searching something, you may find like a gazillion amount of plugins that do the same thing, and you're like, what the hell do I choose from? What am I gonna choose now? I'm lost. So that is the thing.
How many contributors? How many active contributors do you have to FuseBox or for?
Well, not many. Not many people. It's as you know, it's not as popular as Webpack, right? People do like FuseBox. People come, they try it out, they like it, they keep using it. But then if they see that something, okay, they found a bug, or they want some particular feature, they just go for it. They just open a pull request and say, okay, well, I'm gonna need that. I think it's fine. Yeah, we review it and we merge it and we release a new version. So,
sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I noticed that documentation always is one of the things I key on. There's some really, really good packages and libraries out there, but the documentation's so bad that the features take a back seat because they're perceived as hard to use because people can't understand what the features are or how to use them. I noticed FuseBox has great documentation. How did you do that? I mean, is there any trick or any methodology or process you followed to get such good doc?
Well, everybody hates documenting. And I tell you, that is the most painful thing I've ever done in my life. I mean, if we're talking about developing, obviously, that is extremely hard. It requires so much mental activity to do that. There is no recipe. You just need to. You cannot do it in one sit. You need to do it gradually. You need to pick a subject and you need to go for it. Like very thoroughly, so to say. There is no recipe. You just need to document. You just need to first, of course, it doesn't come like all the way in. You need to listen to people. You need to understand what people are lacking, like what understanding they are lacking, right? What kind of clarifications do they need? Like, why do they actually need this option? Like, what does it actually give, and why? The reasons behind it. So these are the important aspects of it too. Yeah, not just the way you think you should document, but what are the others think about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. It always comes down to understanding, what the other person's pain points are and what the use cases are. Yeah. So, I'm going to hit some questions here in this segment. First of all, someone said thank you because your answers are very clear and to the point. So thanks for that. One question was, how do you go about making FuseBox so much faster than Webpack?
It's mostly about caching. It's mostly about the architecture. Simply because Webpack cannot cache entire modules. Well, in FuseBox, there is this interesting feature as in dynamic modules. So you can register a module in the runtime pretty much, and you can just, any other module that, any other module can access it, like after that. So that's how also the HMR works. Sorry, I forgot what was the question. No, I just got carried away.
No problem. How do you go about making FuseBox so much faster than?
So much faster. Yeah. That was the caching, right? So FuseBox can take just imagine a huge library with like 1,000 files. FuseBox obviously traverses it all and makes a sort of a package that is being cached in the file system. And when user requests it like a second time, right, then we don't spend time on looking it up. We just check whether, okay, it matches the version, it has the same versions, and we just take one, it's just literally one operation. We just take a file and we just stick it into the bundle. So just like fs read file sync that file and just put it there, and that's how it's fast. That's why the secondary reload, it takes literally milliseconds.
Sure. With mission critical applications dependent upon FuseBox, could you spend a minute and tell us about your testing methodology or your tactics? How do you test it? Because I'm sure it's quite a bit of code.
Yeah, it is. It is a huge amount of code. And speaking of which, I am now in the middle of rewriting everything because I realized that I couldn't do things that I wanted to. Right? I couldn't do it faster, so I decided that I'm just gonna take now my experience of what FuseBox is and take it to another level. Right?
Sure.
And about testing, it's important. It's important to take like two approaches in my opinion. One is the unit testing, all right, where you start splitting your application into like small chunks of code, and then you start testing them separately. And then the final part is the actual integration part, where you test how the entire structure, how the entire product works. And this is the integration tests in FuseBox. They are in majority there, mostly integrations tests. But in V4, I'm taking a more also unit testing to have a sort of a 100% coverage, test coverage on everything, to avoid the regressions which happen, and which you should avoid.
Sure. One of the other things you'd said earlier was that I don't know if this may be too strong, but you weren't fond of TypeScript. You understand the reasons why. But I noticed that you use TypeScript for transpiling in Fuse.
That is true.
What drove that decision?
The decision is simple, and the answer is it's simply that TypeScript is ECMAScript compliant strictly. And I can give you an example. Maybe 1 or 2 years ago, there was a trend with synthetic imports, which means that users would just import a default module from a library that doesn't have a default export. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. That if you check like many repositories, there is like something like import React from React or something like that,
right?
Which is incorrect, because you're supposed to put asterisk there and as React, because React doesn't export a default statement, constant or whatever, right? So, and that all happened because once upon a time, Bubble suddenly decided, okay, we're gonna introduce that plugin that will fix it for people, and that was a very misleading thing to do, and to have as junior developers just step in and they see, okay, well, people do it that way. That's probably a standard that like I can just import everything as default, right? Although the actual specification says, well, you're actually not allowed to do that. Well, you are allowed, but I mean, you should not do that because, well, it's not correct. And even TypeScript struggle with that, and they have enabled. They have this option, synthetic polyfills, synthetic default imports. They have it there, because the majority actually took that error, and carried it all the way, to the present day. And so yeah, this is why I like TypeScript, because it's strict,
Sure.
In a way, and yeah.
Cool.
So and all the proposals, sort of like TypeScript doesn't take, TypeScript is strictly compliant, so you know exactly, like if you see the feature that's on TypeScript, right, and you know exactly that this thing is backed by ECMAScript community. It's not going to be changed. It's not going to be removed or modified. So,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Something else is with a project like FuseBox, where it's large, lots of code, you've got a lot of contributors and whatnot. But do you remember that first day that you started work on it, and what that first module was? Where did you start? Do you remember your first line of code?
Yeah, I think I do remember. I created a class called FuseBox. This is how it all started, and I realized that, yeah, I need a resolver, so I started with the resolver. That just reads a file, just parses it, gets the required statements, and just tries to match it all, And yes, this is how I started. I remember I've been releasing like every 10 seconds, sorry, because I was collaborating with my friend who started to be very excited about it, because he said, well, actually, that actually works. So, and he said, well, yeah, I couldn't bundle this library. Okay, yeah, well, I guess we have some problem there. Can you try that? I said, okay, I got it fixed. I tried again. I released another version, and he tries it and said, yeah, it's working. So, yeah.
Sure. Sure. Why don't we move on? We've got about 20 minutes left. I'm going to put you on the spot and take advantage of your experience and your background and kind of talk for a few minutes about where you see this whole JavaScript ecosystem heading. What do you think the most important trend is right now that we should all keep our eye on?
Yeah, these are three official ones, right? Which are React, Angular, and Vue. Well, my personal like preference will be definitely React, but those two frameworks that definitely they just keep pushing, and keep getting more and more like involvement in the JavaScript scene. Right. So I would say we should watch them and say where this will lead us.
Sure. Do you have any ongoing conversations with like Dan Abramov or anyone on the Angular or on the Vue side with regard to FuseBox?
Well, we had once when we were implementing a Vue plugin for FuseBox. We had a conversation, but we didn't actually get any meaningful like responses from the community, and so we had to do it ourselves. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, what kind of changes do you see in the way that we work and the tools that we're going to be using? Call it in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. I think it will be more automated. So people will spend less time setting it up, deploying, building. It will be more or less organized, in many ways.
Sure.
That will save people's time.
Do you think we'll lose anything from that in terms of like the ability to debug deep, very serious problems because the tools are doing so much?
Yeah, well, I think it might happen. So, but we cannot lose the flexibility. That's for sure. So if we have a tool that does a particular job and does it well, but then suddenly something is broken, we should be able to debug it. But I guess you're right. The more automation we have, the more dependent we become on this technology. Yeah.
Do you have any fears that AI or machine learning might impact our livelihood as developers? Where machines will be producing the code rather than us.
Yeah. No. Well, in my opinion, it won't unless we reach a technological singularity, and that if we have this singularity over here, like this is the end of the humankind, pretty much, right? And if you remember, if you try to like recall like any sci-fi movies, with AIs involved, they're still programmers. There's still people behind the screens, and they're doing some like typing. If you making a few keystrokes, and tons of code appear on the screen. So. There is AI will be definitely involved, in the future, but I don't think it will completely replace it unless the AI will actually be capable of thinking and like a human.
Sure. Yeah, I've said just the other day that told a friend that I won't be worried until I hear Siri and Alexa arguing.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the questions that came up as well is have you had any talks with the React folks about there's any chance of getting FuseBox as an option and create something like Create React App, or is there a way to use it in Create React App today?
Yeah, I have big plans for that. So after I've rolled out the version 4 of FuseBox. It will be shipped with Create React App too, and we'll definitely have plans on reaching out to TypeScript and React people on that. I have a good confidence in that well, I will be heard.
Gotcha. Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
What kind of skills do you think are going to be critical to web developers over the next 5, again, 3 to 5 year
Yeah.
time frame? For people starting out today, obviously there's some foundational skills. Everybody has to know HTML and CSS and JavaScript, but beyond that, what do you think is going to be most valuable?
In regards to languages, right? I think, well, you can't deny that the JavaScript is the trendiest language nowadays. 70% of code on GitHub, I think, is JavaScript. But besides that, I think that Python has a very good place in the community, right? So I think Python is a very good programming language, and it think it has a lot of future.
Sure.
Yeah, I think Python will be a good option.
Does FuseBox, can it be used with other languages like Python?
Well, why would you use FuseBox with Python?
Oh, you're right. Never mind. Good point.
You don't need to bundle Python.
Yeah, I was going down the whole Django path.
Yeah.
So we're at about 15 minutes left. I'm going to kind of open it up, everyone. I'll skim through the questions, but if there's anything on anyone's mind, please post it in the chat. One question that I think came up, I saw earlier, was for people that are doing projects. Again, as an employer and a manager or a director of an open source project, when you're looking at the types of projects people are creating to build out their portfolio, is there any type of project that you find to be more important than others or more useful?
Like in regards, can you maybe rephrase?
Let me, I should say, what kinds of projects are more valuable for people writing to demonstrate their capabilities and to make an impact on you as an employer or as an open source manager?
Yeah, I honestly don't know. Well, you need to do whatever is try to solve problems. You shouldn't try. Well, yeah, you need to solve problems. You need to propose ideas on how to make the world a better place, right? To make it more reliable, to make it faster, to make it, I mean, in many sense better. So if you, in many ways, so if you think that your tiny library does things much better, then it's a good thing, right? So
sure. Something else that came up is again, for a complex project like FuseBox, do you at what point did you say, hey, this project is bigger than I can handle? For it to continue on, I need to get contributors. Was that a conscious decision, or was it organic? Did it just evolve, or how did you manage that?
It was just organic. It was mostly organic because, well, the more issues I had, and the more people, I opened Gitter, obviously, and people started joining in and asking questions, and then I realized, yeah, well, I would need some help, and people were contributing, helping out with the releases. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm going to rephrase this one question that's come up, but when you're looking at someone's GitHub account, does it matter that there's a number of we'll call it toy projects where as they're learning skills, they're writing small bits of code. Again, they're playing around. Does that have any positive or negative impact on you when you're looking at someone?
Only positive, absolutely positive. Yeah,
cool.
Of course. The more people experiment, the better.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of what I feel as well. That So, folks, I'm going to ask, I think I've hit, let me ask you this. Questions come up about freelancing. In your experience as an employer, you have your own company, and did you do any freelancing along the way in your career? And how did you find and land those jobs if you did freelancing?
I didn't do freelancing. I've always been employed.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. I think that we're coming down to the end. We've got about 10 minutes left, folks. Again, if you have any questions, this is a bit of your last call. It's getting later in the evening for Ivan, and I want to let him wrap up and get a little bit of his evening back. So anyone have any questions? Okay. So Ivan, I'd like to say thank you. This has been very informative. I learned a lot. I know we had a lot of engagement from our folks. I appreciate your time. And I also have to give a shout out to Eddie Wilson, because he connected the two of us together.
He did.
And Eddie, for those of you that don't know, Eddie is a Chingu. He's been a Chingu for some time now, but he's actually a contributor to FuseBox.
He is, yes. Yeah. He is helping a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So could you review Eddie's code for us right now?
It's good, it's good.
I know he is. Yeah. So with that, we're going to wrap it up. Again, thank you for your time. And,
thank you for having me.
I'm going to make it a point to try out FuseBox on my next project coming up here. It sounds
do exciting. That.
Yeah.
You do that.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for participating, and we'll see you at the next one of these next week. So thanks, Ivan. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.